This time on Documentify TV. You've probably seen the headline claim, the oldest tools in North America. But before we accept that label, we have to ask one question every time. What was actually dated and what's being inferred? Today, we're walking through one interior Alaska site that keeps getting cited, the Holzman site, along Shaw Creek in the middle of Tunana Valley. This isn't a who was first in the Americas argument. It's a narrower goal. Separate the hard, dated anchors at Holzman from the bigger interpretations people build on the top. The map matters here. Interior Alaska sits between the old Beringia region and the interior routes farther south. So when a site here is well dated, it becomes a key reference point for how early movement into the continent might have worked. Excavations at Holzman identify two main cultural components stacked in time. The older one is C5b. The younger one above is C5a. They're not the same moment, and mixing them is how oldest stories get messy. Start with C5b, the older component. Here, researchers found a nearly complete mammoth tusk that was directly radiocarbon dated to about 14,000 years ago. And importantly, there's a burned feature in the same component, basically a hearth with charcoal that produces a statistically matching date. In other words, two independent dates that agree inside the same layer alongside stone artifacts. So what can we say safely? It supports human activity on that surface around 14,000 years ago. People left stone tools or flakes. They used fire, and dated materials sit in the same cultural context. What it does not automatically prove is a single dramatic scene. A tusk in a cultural layer doesn't force they killed a mammoth right here. It could be hunting, scavenging, collecting, or other processes. The discipline takeaway is contemporaneity. People and the tusk are in the same time and the same place package, even if the exact story remains open. Now move up to C5a, the younger component. This layer has a more work area feel. Lots of quartz tools, use and evidence consistent with ivory being worked on the site. And inside C5a, researchers identified two shaped mammoth ivory rods that were directly dated to about 13,000 years ago. If you're thinking rods used for what, their function isn't locked. The honest answer is unclear. But the presence of deliberately shaped ivory technology this early is the point. Tools like this are rare in the early record, and the rarity is why Holzman gets attention. This is where interpretation starts to stretch beyond the layer itself. The authors note similarities between the Holzman rods and later rods associated with the Clovis, farther south. That's a reasonable comparison to raise, but it's not a verdict. Other researchers caution that similar-looking tools can reflect broader shared traditions, or even independent invention. Similarity is not the same thing as ancestry. Holzman documents human activity in interior Alaska around 14,000 years ago, anchored by a directly dated mammoth tusk and a closely matching hearth date in the same component. A later component shows early ivory working and two dated ivory rods around 13,000 years ago. Early technology, even if we can't yet pin down the exact function. Oldest tools depends on definition. Oldest dated layer at one site, oldest specific tool type, or oldest anything anywhere. If you don't define it, headlines will define it for you. That's it for today's video, folks. See you next time, right here on Documentify TV.